Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Kevin with Mix Coach, and I am really excited today because we've got a new friend of mine, Justin Glasco, and we're going to be talking to him. He's in a studio just outside of LA, and yeah, it's going to be really good. I've got so many questions for him that I'm afraid I'm going to scare him. He's going to think it's an interrogation or something like that. And I know you guys will have questions too. I don't know if you had a chance to check out his the Stories YouTube channel or Justin's website, but he's a really busy guy, and I love what he's doing with stories. And that's not all he does, but he does this very well. We have some similar backgrounds too, which we'll discuss a little later on too. But hey, while we're waiting on some people to show up, I was going to tell you about the workshop that I've got, mixcoach.com/workshop. Go there. I've got some live training for you. Well, not live training. I recorded it before, but it's got some good training. I think you'll really like it. It's something I'm proud of. So go and check it out. mixcoach.com/workshop. And also one other thing, if you like what we do today, hit the like button. If you're on Facebook, hit the like button and consider subscribing. One thing that I'm really proud of this week is that we crossed over 10,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. And I'm very proud of that. And I'm just grateful to have you as a subscriber. If you subscribe, when we go live, you'll get notifications, especially if you ring that bell there, and you'll know when we do kind of last minute things like this. I'm still trying to figure out how to properly let people know that we're going live without bugging people. So anyway, thank you for 10,000 subscribers. I'm very grateful if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, I will be grateful for you too, okay? Because you'll be a subscriber, hopefully, if you hit that little subscribe button and then ring the bell there. Okay, so I'm giddy to talk to Justin here. So let's pull Justin on. Justin is, hey, Justin, how you doing, man?
Good morning.
You got your LA hat on. I should have worn my Nashville hat.
Yeah, it's
So
good.
Justin, you're outside of Glendale and Pasadena, just
Yeah,
outside of LA proper.
it's technically still LA proper. It's a Los Angeles address. It's just kind of towards the east side.
Right.
Yeah, we're kind of tucked between Glendale and Silver Lake and Pasadena, right there at the Angeles crest, where the 134 meets the 2. So yeah,
Okay.
that's such an LA. The 134 meets the 2. It's such an LA
Yeah,
thing. But
that
yeah,
is definitely.
it's Eagle Rock. Yeah, Eagle Rock is the
Yeah,
name of
that's
it.
definitely something I had to, when I moved away from California at the end of last year. One thing, I don't know what it is, but you name the interstates, you put a "the" in front of it, and when
Yeah.
you do that in Nashville, people instantly know that you've been in Southern California. So yeah, I live off the 24 here, not too
Yeah,
far off the
right.
24.
Yeah.
I'll mention this too, Justin. We have some similar backgrounds because you are from. I don't think you're from Nashville, but you spent a lot of time in Nashville. So, tell me about your story in Nashville.
Well, after college, after finishing up at Berkeley, I moved down to Nashville to, get my music career going, and that would have been 2003. And I had visited Nashville a lot as a kid growing up. You and I both, came up in Southern gospel music, which is a pretty cool common thread.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it just kind of was the thing you do after school to get started in music, and growing up in kind of in and around Christian music. It's like, well, you obviously moved to Nashville. That's the thing. So I got my start there, which was great. I was there for 6.5 years before moving out to LA the first time, and did a lot of touring out of Nashville and cut my teeth in the studios and in and around Nashville, and kind of built up my own working production space there. And that production space has moved across the country a couple of times between LA and New York, and then back to Nashville again, and then back to LA, which I don't plan on doing anymore. I'm getting a little old to be moving my studio across the country. Um, yeah, it's been a real journey, and I have a lot of love for my Nashville friends and the people there, and the experiences that I've had with them. It's I miss it. I miss those people a lot.
Yeah. So what took you to LA?
I think I got one funny thing I feel like that has changed about Nashville. Um, uh, but at this point, Nashville's a lot different, and it feels a lot more open. But when I was there the first time, I got kind of parked in this uh, CCM cul-de-sac, and there was like, I was playing keyboards for an artist named Jeremy Camp, and that was kind of my first gig. I went from working at a pizza joint on Music Row on a Friday to playing in an arena on a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally was an overnight life-changing experience. And but there's a brand thing that happens, or used to happen, where I became this Christian music keyboard player guy. And that was what I did. And that was where I was parked, and there weren't really opportunities for me outside of that in Nashville. And that has changed in a big way. Everybody, it's such a collaborative place, and people if people like your vibe there now, it's like it's way more open to be able to experience a lot of different kinds of music than it was. But at the time, I found LA to be a lot more open, and I was able to kind of take all of the experiences that I had in Nashville and bring them to LA, and people just had such an open mind about like what was possible and what we could do together. And I was able to basically say, like, I'm a drummer and a producer and a keyboard player, and like, what do you need? I want to be part of this community here. And there's such a cool singer-songwriter community out here, kind of in and around the Hotel Cafe. And I was able to really plug in there like really quickly, which is actually how I initially met Ryan Lerman, who does the Stories Project and Scary Pockets, which we'll probably talk about, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. So it's been great. I mean, I love like meeting somebody and going like, hey, let's write a song. And they're like, great. They don't care. They don't care what my credits were or who I had worked with or whatever. They just like, yeah, this is a good vibe. It'd be a fun day. And if the worst thing that happens is I get to hang out with this musician and we get half of a song written and, we go get a coffee, then that's a pretty great day, I think there's also a hustle out here in LA that matches the hustle that I have naturally. It's definitely a little bit faster pace. It's a more expensive place to live and operate a studio. And in some ways, I've felt like the value that people put on each other's time out here is it's significant.
Wow.
Yeah, that's one thing that's pretty special about it. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll agree with you. There's a little bit different culture there. It's pretty interesting that the hustle thing. I've thought about that too. There's definitely a hustle out there. So, but I have experienced the Pigeonhole thing that you're talking about. As a matter of fact, Gregory Price mentioned Pigeonhole. I have noticed since I got here in Nashville in '96. I have noticed that you're an engineer. Okay, here's what you do. And to play bass on someone's project, which is something I actually have more experience doing at the time, it was like, no, you're the engineer. And but yeah, and I never got to work that much in the music business out there in LA. I mixed a few projects out there and did a few things out there, but not in the scene. But yeah, the Pigeonhole thing. So, do you think the Pigeonhole thing in Nashville is any better now? You said. Since there's kind of an influx of more and more people from New York and LA and Nashville, that they're kind of less pigeonholey.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's the influence of kind of outsiders coming in. Although like I know a ton of people have moved there in the last few years, especially um, more so than the industry itself around things have changed.
Hmm.
Where the the risk people are more willing to take risks because the risks aren't as expensive. Right.
Mm.
So like if you had a country record that you were producing in 97, right? And there was
Hmm.
this new drummer in town and you really loved their playing, but they didn't have a lot of credits and maybe they were a bit of a wild card, but you thought this drummer could potentially make this record really special.
Right.
Well, the odds of you hiring that person in 97 because you've got six other players in the room, you're at the sound kitchen or sound emporium or whatever,
Right.
you're hiring this whole crew. um the odds of you taking a risk on that kind of musician is much slimmer. Whereas today we're hanging out, we're at my home studio, there's this new guy in town, he seems like a good dude. I met him at Trader Joe's, like this is a perfect example. There's a guitar player that just moved to LA a couple years ago named Taylor Crop, and I was wearing my Sound Emporium shirt and my
Mm.
Jim Keltner baseball cap that I got at Nelson Drum Shop in Nashville. And and he walks up to me and he says, "Hey, I've got that same outfit." And I was like, "What?" And he had a name tag, and Trader Joe's name tag said Taylor on it. And I was like, "Oh, I'm Justin. You've obviously got good taste in recording studios." And he was like, "Yeah, I moved here from Nashville, blah, blah, blah." We hit it off. And I've hired him for a few records. We've played a bunch of gigs together at this point.
Hmm.
And I was able to hire this guy because he had an Instagram account where he could showcase his playing. So I was able to send him to the artist or send his, account to the artist. They were able
Hmm.
to see like, wow, this guy's really special. I've never heard of him before. And the first time he and I worked together, I like pulled him aside and I was like, "Hey, buddy, don't mention Trader Joe's. Like, don't tell anybody that we met at Trader Joe's. Don't tell anybody." At this point, he was still working there, and he crushed those records. He just
Really?
destroyed them. Like, he sounded so good. His vibe was so great. He was so prepared and excited to be there. And I like there was definitely a time where it would be a lot harder to bring somebody like that in on a record,
Right.
and I think that's what's changed just in general, as the industry has changed, and as the way that we make records has changed. I think that's
Yeah.
I think it's an improvement in a lot of ways.
Gregory Price's $2 Chuck. I don't know what he's talking about though. So
They got
what
it.
I'm taking from
Yeah.
that, I like to kind of distill down what I'm hearing there, because we talked briefly yesterday about what we were going to try to talk about today. And, I ask you, if you're going to a brand new city, like if you're moving from Nashville to LA, or let's just say you're moving from LA and you're going to move to another, let's say Austin or
Mhm.
something like that. What's the first thing you're going to do as a brand new musician in a new town? Now, this doesn't have to apply to somebody who's actually moving across the country. It could have everything to do with how somebody who's actually talented can get work and sustain, and sustain their habit of buying gear and stuff like that. What's the first few things you would do, say, if you moved to Austin? Would you go to Trader Joe's first, or what?
I mean, it depends on if you need a job. And there's no shame in that. This is, you know, a good portion of it is preparation and a good portion of all of it's luck. Um, and there has to be some combination of those two things. I think that if I was moving to Austin, the first thing I would probably do is save up enough money before I moved. And this was a mistake that I made back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
When I first moved to LA, I moved here with just enough money to put a deposit on an apartment and move into a recording studio situation. Um, I ended up finding a house here in Eagle Rock in 2008 through some friends and lived in this tiny little basement apartment and had a converted garage studio, and it was twice what my rent was in Nashville, which was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up, this is kind of a side note, but I ended up getting a gig at Saddleback Church.
Yeah.
And there was a friend of mine who, from my CCM days, he and I had stayed in touch, and he was a drummer in Riverside, and he's still one of my dearest friends, an incredible drummer named Dan Bailey, who's also a great engineer and does a lot of remote session work. And he plays for an artist named Father John Misty now. But he and I had stayed in touch over the years, and he invited me to come down and play this gig. And that gig saved my butt, because, there was like 5 services in a weekend,
Right.
and it kept me from having to get a day job,
Right.
and it allowed me to really focus on connecting with people kind of during the week. But before I moved to LA, I was taking trips to LA. And that's the thing I would say was the most important, is to move to a city, any major city, cold, not having spent time there and not knowing anybody can be, the odds, it lowers, I feel like it lowers your odds for success,
Right.
and it can be an increasingly, it can get to be a really lonely place really fast, and overwhelming, with any city. So I moved to Nashville out of college with 2 of my best friends. My best friend from high school, who went to Full Sail, and my best friend from college, Tim Denbo, who's still an amazing bass player in Nashville and a wonderful dude. He still writes all my number charts for me. So like I'm still buddies with all those guys, but I had a built-in community moving there,
Yeah.
So out
That's
here, I
cool.
would just come out and crash on my friend Carrie Brothers' couch. And Carrie he's kind of the mayor of Hollywood. He would just go to Hotel Cafe and introduce me to every other singer-songwriter and producer that he already knew. And it just felt like such an inviting thing. And I think that if I had just moved out here, a few years earlier, not knowing that group of people, it would have been a lot harder,
Right.
And making yourself available, having coffee with as many people as you possibly can.
Right.
I heard some of your guys, when you were talking the other day, about doing the freebies.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's a bit of a slippery slope.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on what you're trying to do, but if you're in any way a songwriter or a track maker, if you can get somebody in your studio under the guise of, if you can just say like, hey, let's write a song, a lot of records for
Wow.
me have happened because we wrote a song and I made a demo in the same day that sounded better than anything that person had ever done before.
Wow.
Um,
That's good. That's good advice, man.
and then you get something out of it. Even if you don't get to produce the record, your time was still invested in creating something that didn't exist when you walked in the studio that morning.
Right.
And a lot of times that artist doesn't even end up cutting that song because they've already picked out the songs for their record, but the experience was so positive that they end up still wanting to do the rest of their
Mm-hmm.
record with you. So that's from my experience kind of been the best move in that direction, to do the free work thing,
Right. Yeah.
So
Well, that's really good advice. And I have realized too that some of my friends, like I'm a songwriter too, but not to the extent of some of my friends. I've noticed that some of my friends that moved to Nashville at about the same time that I did, who started writing songs immediately, got themselves into positions of arranging songs, producing songs, producing, artists, things like that. I just feel like a songwriter gets a lot more opportunity than anybody else does, because you're in that infant stage of like, you created the song, you have more
right.
control over it. Whereas some people, like if you're an engineer and a really good engineer, you still have to wait on somebody to create the song, and ask you to put your touch on it. So, Justin, that's some really good advice that I wholeheartedly agree with. And I don't think even though I think that I think the context that I said do the freebie is to get an artist who you would like to work with and bring them in under the guise of, hey, check out this new microphone, or check out the studio and you would be comfortable in here. But I think the writing thing is a much better, if you write songs, is a much better and more sustaining thing to do, because you continuously creating. Whereas if you just bring them into your studio, you're just exposing them to what you have and what you can do. But if you bring them in to write a song, they not only get that, but they also get, and I can help you, get the song done that's been in your head for a little while,
Right.
Yeah.
There's another side of this too. If you're not a songwriter, but you are a producer with a studio, like if you have it, I think establishing some relationships outside of just the engineer, producer, and client relationships. Like if you have relationships in TV and film for sync licensing, or in any kind of like indie A&R world or marketing world or management world, like I think it's cool to bring someone in and be like, I really like this song that I heard you play at the Hotel Cafe the other night, or at Belcourt Taps for a writer's round. Like, would you be interested in letting me produce this track for you, and we can split the master on it, and I can send it to my licensing person. That's been another really good way to get somebody in, and they understand that your time has value. Like if you're willing to give studio time and offer an opportunity, but then they're also willing to give back like part ownership of the master side of the song, so that you can exploit that through your outlets. I think that's another good way to do it too. And then if that person says like, oh, I really love this work, this track came out great, maybe we got some kind of sync out of it from this licensing person, it's built-in value, I think, in some sense. And those are things that we always have to kind of consider, like what kind of value outside of the traditional, I own a commercial recording studio business model. What kind of other value are we bringing to the table?
Right.
And the more
That's
value
good.
you bring to the table, the more cared for the client and their project feels.
Right. That's good stuff, Justin. Hey, so the way I found you, you already know, but not everybody does, I don't think. I got hip to this thing called Scary Pockets, which is, you've already mentioned once, which is Ryan Lerman and
Jack Conte.
And Jack Conte. Jack is a rock star too. Jack has a band with his wife called Pomplamoose. I knew about Pomplamoose probably 10 or 11 years ago when they first started. Was real impressed with what they were doing. Fast forward a few years, Jack did Scary Pockets, and in the meantime started a little thing called Patreon. Yeah. So and I didn't realize that he created Patreon. I'm like, oh, this dude is like, he's all about it, man. But anyway, so diving down the Scary Pockets hole there, I found another thing called Stories, which is not a funk. Scary Pockets is funk covers of songs, and Stories is all acoustic revisionings of old songs. So why don't we take a listen to one of the songs. I'm just going to pull up one kind of randomly, one that I found today. This is actually Natalie Dawn, who is Jack's wife. Did that pop up? I can't see it here. Let me share it. Okay, here we go. Sharing it to the stream. This is cool. The YouTube page here. I fast forwarded to the credits here.
Cool.
Let's see. Let you hear a little bit of that. You'll have to let me know, guys. You'll have to let me know in the comments that you can actually hear this. Okay, check this out.
It was cool, but it was so pretend. Yeah, yeah. Since you've been gone, dedicated, you took the time. It wasn't long till I called you mine. Yeah, yeah. Since you've been gone, and all you'd ever hear me say is how I picture me with you. That's all you'd ever hear me say. But since you've been gone, I can breathe for the first time. I'm so moving on, yeah, yeah. Thanks to you, now I get what I want. Since you've been gone.
I have so many questions, man. First of all, that arrangement is incredible. And I'd like to know, is that mostly Ryan that's doing a lot of the arranging on this stuff?
Well, there's very little preparation. So outside of like picking the songs, picking the musicians, and pairing the songs with the singers, and that's usually a dialogue between the vocalist and Ryan, kind of leading up to the session day. So on a typical, I can walk you through like a typical session day, because that's where
please do.
That's kind of we do usually Sundays, and I get in around 8. And I bring a bunch of microphones to Ryan's studio. If we're working at my studio, like obviously everything's already here, but I'll like have to clear my floor, take the drum kit down, move the piano, do all the stuff. But I'll go to Ryan's, and he's got a great like built out garage studio. So literally like where Natalie is sitting, I'm sitting 3 feet in front of her at a desk. Like we're all in the same
You're in the same room?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm on headphones. Nobody's using ears or monitors or anything. And I'll get there and like set up my mics and move the piano into position, because that's the same room that he does Scary Pockets in a lot of times too.
Yeah.
So the really tight Scary Pockets videos happen there. And they've done like some Wolfpack stuff there, and he's an amazing artist and arranger and guitar player in his own right. So he ends up doing a ton of work there throughout the week. So whatever reset needs to happen for stories, we end up getting in there early. And then the first artist usually arrives around 10 or so. And we do 5 artists a day, 5 artists in one day, and each artist gets 2 songs. So 10 songs in one day. And that usually turns into 12 songs, because if we finish somebody kind of early, we'll end up saying like, all right, what else do you want to do? Do you have another cover that you're familiar with? Do you have another song that you know the lyrics to? Like, was there one that was also on the list that we didn't get to last time or whatever? And we'll pull something up. So a lot of times we get these little bonus songs that end up being really special. That particular band. And so in the morning, we'll typically have like Ryan and a keyboard player. And the afternoon, it'll typically be Ryan and a secondary guitar player. And we'll move the piano back into place just for a different kind of arrangement, a different musical take on it. It also keeps someone from getting, keeps fresh energy in the room. And then, whatever, there's usually like another musician, a clarinetist, or last week we had Rob Moose on violin, who's incredible. And, we get a lot of these players in that Ryan's worked with over the years that are just staples in the LA kind of session player community. Like for that video is a perfect example.
Larry Goldings?
Keyboard player is Larry Goldings.
Oh my gosh.
Who was in James Taylor's band. I can safely say my favorite piano player. My favorite living piano player. Yeah.
He's my favorite B3 player.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Unbelievable B3 player. I remember first seeing his name, that India RE record that came out, 20 some years ago. And there was just this super tasteful, beautiful B3 playing in the background. I was like, what is that? What is that like enchantment, that magic that's happening back there? And I saw his name and I started looking for his music, and he's got a bunch of his own solo music and has played on tons of records. And now he he currently tours with James Taylor's band. He's been with James for a long time now. And the pedal steel player is a guy named Rich Hinman, who is a wonderful, incredible guitar player and pedal steel player. We've lost him to Boston. He moved back east.
Oh no!
But him and a wonderful guitar player named Adam Levy have a project called Hinman versus Levy. That's this incredible jazz guitar music. And Rich plays with Sarah Bareilles. He plays with Katie Lang. He's done a ton of stuff on Broadway. And he's an amazing guy. We've worked on some records together, and just a lovely human and an incredible, you know, he's the pedal steel equivalent of Larry Goldings, basically.
Well, so I was going to ask you, when you, first of all, let me put a little sidebar in here. I believe that what you guys are doing with Stories, Wolfpack, and even like Dirty Loops and Stories, I think, and this is kind of a bold statement, I kind of think this is the future of music. I kind of think that, you know, that people are a little bit weary of super produced music and not even knowing whether it's a real vocalist or whatever, versus seeing somebody record something and even leaving in the mistakes, some of the mistakes that happen in them. I think that there is an authenticity about that is very appealing to me as a jaded music guy. And I think what you guys are doing is very, I think it's going to be the thing even more and more moving forward. So this is why I admire what you're doing. But let me ask another question about the arrangement thing. So does Ryan book, like you said, a couple singers, him, a guitar player, him and a keyboard player, and then it's like, whatever you want to do, we'll arrange it as we go? Or does he say something like, hey, I want to get Rick Hinman in here for a day, and these songs would be great with steel on them? Or is it just completely reimagined, like, this song, I never thought it would sound good with steel, but here's Rick, he's going to put steel on it?
Yeah, well, there's it kind of happens on the floor. I guess I went through all that and didn't answer your arrangement question. There's sometimes it's like, if there's a beautiful, like we had Lee Pardini a couple weeks ago, keyboard player from the band Dawes, just wonderful. He's a solo musician, like incredible piano player. And if somebody like him is in, a lot of times Ryan will go like, why don't you just do this with the artist? And Ryan will step away and you'll get this duet between that instrumentalist and the artist. And Ryan just like leaves room for that to happen, you know? And I think that that's half of it, is just like curating opportunities for people to be creative in that space and feel the freedom to get their ideas out. I think that's part of what makes it special and makes it feel unique, is it's not overcooked, you know? So that, and even down to like, I'm definitely a part of that process, and I bring my producer hat with me when I do these sessions. It's not just putting mics up. Like it's a lot of like, hey, this feels too fast, or, you know, hey, should we try a different key? It would be cool if we did these stops in this section. Like,
yeah,
I love that Ryan's been the room feels open, and there's so much just mutual respect between the artists and the musicians and myself as the engineer, that like no ideas are off limits, you know?
Yeah.
So
I asked you earlier, I said, hey, is there anything that you're like, you were just, you know, it was one of those moments where you knew you had something special when it went down, and all this stuff feels this way to me, but you mentioned this one, and I'm going to see if we can play it real quick.
Yeah.
Can you read that? Don't Think Twice. Let's play that real quick, and I'll ask you some more questions if you don't mind.
Well, it ain't no use sit and wonder why, babe. And if you don't know by now, and wonder why it'll never do somehow. Oh, when your rooster crows at the break of dawn, look out your window and oh, I'll be gone. You're the reason I'm traveling on. So don't think twice, it's alright. Ain't no use in turning on the light out. The light I never know. Oh, ain't no use in turning on the light.
Man, so good. Okay, so I don't want to risk getting a copyright thing, but we are getting commentary on this, so I'm not playing the whole thing. But I've got a few questions. Okay, that mic that she's singing into, I haven't seen one of those before. What is that?
Well, Monica Martin sounds good on everything. And that is Lee Pardini on that video. That's the keyboard player I was just talking about.
Yeah, that is not Larry Golding. So I didn't want anybody to get confused.
Yeah,
okay.
and just the way that Lee, his first moment of approaching the instrument at the second verse is just like, and when everybody takes that big breath before the last verse you just played, where there's just this like space, like those things happen in that room in such a magical way, because everybody's listening. There's no click track. There's no distraction.
Headphone mixes.
No headphone mixes. You're literally just hearing the person sitting right next to you like deliver this emotion. You know, it's super raw. And I'm just trying to stay out of the way, you know. And this microphone is cool. It's company called Earthworks. They make some really amazing stuff, really unique microphones, very hi-fi. What do you call them? Analysis mics, like the basically like, what are they called? RTA mics.
Yeah.
They make these like really high-end RTA mics that
that's the ones I'm familiar with.
Yeah, they're really great at high SPLs. You can use them on kick drums if you want to, but they're condensers. They're cool. They're cool mics. They started making this this vocal mic, and I'm forgetting the model number now. Shoot. Everybody on YouTube asks about the mic, but it's great. It's got a really tight polar pattern. It's very hi-fi. As is true with the rest of their line.
Did you read what James wrote? Is that the SR314?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, that's it, James.
Yeah, it's cool. I when I started doing these sessions for Ryan, it started, I didn't even know what it was. He just called me up and was like, "Hey, can you come to the studio on Sunday? We're doing this session. It's part of Scary Pockets." I was like, "Great. Totally, yeah, let's do it." I thought it was just a one-off, and here we are, 100 almost 200 songs later. But he had this mic, and Earthworks had just sent it to him, and I was like, "Man, let's try it out." Like, they make great stuff, and it's really cool. I would say I've never used it with like a full band and a drum kit. I feel like it would get a little messy in the top end if you introduce cymbals into the equation. But cymbals are the worst, and I'm a drummer. It's rough.
And it's one thing I've noticed about Scary Pockets and this is if you do have drums, there's no cymbals.
Very little.
I think makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So the reason you chose the mic, besides the fact that it sounds good, is there a polar pattern that works in this really close knit environment, or are you using it despite that?
No, it's I think it's hypercardioid. I'd have to double check that as well. But the thing that really helps is that room that we're in is it's built really well. It's basically a vocal booth. It's super dead. And that the isolation that I'm able to get by, even when I'm using ribbon microphones, like keeping people in the null and positioning the microphone in a way that like that's my Flea 47 on Ryan's acoustic guitar.
It sounds amazing.
It's a great mic. But you know, I've got it positioned in a way that like there's very little vocal, very little piano. It's very isolated. It's an AEA R88 over top of the piano, which is an XY ribbon microphone, a passive ribbon microphone. And that is like, the null is pointed directly at the singer. So there's like hardly any vocal in the piano mic. So I really am able to like isolate as much as and because everybody plays so quietly, I'm really able to get to a place where there is a lot of fidelity and separation,
right?
Almost to a fault. Like we've actually tried to get away from that a little bit and trying to mess things up a little bit at this point.
Okay. So I've been recording records for 30 years now, and you just mentioned something that I'm ashamed to say I haven't really dove into as much as you're saying. You're saying like finding the dead spot of the microphone. I have always just tried to kind of found where the instrument sounded the best, but you're talking about you're finding where the instrument sounds the best, and you're putting the vocal in the dead spot of the microphone at the same time. That's tell me how you go about miking a piano with two ribbon mics, and not only getting a great piano sound, but also getting the vocal to disappear. How do you just like put headphones on and move it around? How do you do that?
I mean, you can kind of look at what the polar pattern is of the microphone, and you can see like that particular mic AEA has done a really good job with giving, like, I mean, most companies do. You can basically look at the documentation and see like, okay, this is where the null is of this ribbon microphone. In a figure 8 microphone, from what I understand, I didn't go to engineering school, so I'm making up a lot of the stuff, but
we all do.
You know, the front and back of the microphone in figure 8 are going to be are going to be kind of an identical image basically, and then the sides are the nulls. And you can, I mean, I'll use ribbon mics with a singer playing an acoustic guitar, and I'll point that ribbon mic right at the instrument, angle it down a little bit, and to where the top of the microphone is pointed at their mouth. And it's wild, like how little vocal you get and how big the guitar sounds, you know. That's kind of the concept.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess I was thinking, now I have done that. I've done it, you know, used a cardioid microphone and, you know, and put the singer in the dead spot of the mic. I have done that. So you just kind of did it by documentation, not necessarily experimentation, right?
Well, I've just used those microphones so much that I know the experimentation comes from preparation. You know, it comes from just having done it. And that particular mic, the R88, it's a really large microphone, and it's 2 ribbon microphones mounted inside one housing. It's a stereo ribbon. Okay. So it's totally in phase. It's mic'd in stereo because it's an XY ribbon mic. Okay. To address the question there.
Yeah. You know what? Why don't we just go through here? There's some really good questions coming in here. Gregory Price said, any mid-side stuff, Bloomline pair, or are you pretty much just using what you're talking about there?
Yeah, the R88 is Bloomline basically. That's how it's.
Okay.
I'm not really doing a lot of like mid-side processing through. I'll do that here at the studio when I'm, you know, sometimes when I'm micing an acoustic guitar and trying to get a really wide hi-fi thing, I'll do the mid-side stuff. I've got a Shure VP88 that I love, that I use for some mid-side stuff. You know, doing drums or acoustics. That's a really cool mic. That stuff's really great on like Leslie speakers, getting a really wide rotary speaker thing. I've had good luck with that. But yeah, in the room there, it's we move so fast that there's not a lot of time for experimentation. But one thing I will do to get a really cool stereo image, this is a really fun trick. So there's some microphones that I should mention that you'll see in a lot of the videos, kind of the new videos, and then the ones that are kind of the back half of the first 6 months of what we were doing. There's Soyuz, a company called Soyuz, and they're 013s. They're their tube, small diaphragm tube mics, and they're unbelievable. They're incredible sounding, really cool character. And I use those on acoustics and basically just float those around the room. I have one on the left side of the room, one on the right side, and I'll just, like, wherever that guitar player is, I follow them with that microphone. Because we end up for video,
are those the white mics that look like KM54s or something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Wonderful microphones. They make amazing stuff. And that's been really cool. And a lot of these guitars have pickups in them. Let me see if I've got one. Yeah. You'll see some of these guitars have these rubber bridge guitars. So there's like this muted rubber bridge thing here.
Oh yeah.
And so that kind of mutes the strings a little bit, and they actually like have this classical guitar kind of thing that it does. And we use these guitars a lot because they complement fuller acoustic guitars in a way without going fully electric. But these guitars have a humbucker pickup built into them.
Yeah.
And a couple of these two jacks, and one is a piezo pickup underneath the bridge, and one is the magnetic pickup. And I'll run the pickup or the output of that guitar through a spring reverb and a tape echo, or there's a really great Kalamazoo, like a little vintage Kalamazoo amp there that Kalamazoo, I believe. Or no, it's made by K. It was like basically a Silvertone amp. It's about that big, and it's got a tremolo on it. So I'll just crank that tremolo all the way up. So while you've got this and put a microphone on that guitar. So while you've got this kind of hi-fi thing, there's also this motion happening that creates a stereo effect without actually using two microphones and trying to get this like super hi-fi stereo image. It's actually this like more interesting, haunting ear candy kind of thing that creates a width in the mix later without having to do a bunch of tricks and reamping things, or duplicating tracks and running things through effects, which I still do a lot too. But this is like a really fun, like in the room, natural way of getting that thing. And also because the singer can hear that, it also affects the performance. They can hear this amp doing this like motion, and it just creates a different kind of tension and creativity in the room, I think.
Wow.
So
I would love to. Is there a song that you're using the rubber bridge guitar on that we can mention? So we won't play it, but or is it in a batch coming up?
No, it's in a ton of them. we've done so many, I can't remember.
That's okay, Justin. That's okay. You've done
Wait for the Moment, which is the artist is Hunter, and it's a Wolfpack cover. That song has a really cool kind of baritone rubber bridge bass line thing happening in it, and you can really hear the effect of that in that track. That's a really, really fun one. That one came out great.
I will put that in the comment section.
Cool.
In the description, so you guys can go and check that out. Hey, let's jump to a couple more questions here. Merrill Bradshaw, are you using outboard mic pre's or computer interface such as an Apollo?
Here at my studio, so for stories, Ryan has an Apollo based system, and so we end up, he's got some really nice Great River pre's, and he's got a 4-channel Vintech with some EQs, which is kind of a Neve thing, and then he has a 4710 Universal Audio pre that's light piped into the Apollo.
Okay.
And we clock from the Apollo. So
Okay.
mostly I lean on the Great Rivers for the acoustics for the 013s.
Mm-hmm.
And then I lean on the 1073 Vintech pre's for the vocal and the piano mics. And then any kind of extra things I typically pick up with the 4710. And then the Apollo is kind of for spares. You know, everything's
Mm-hmm.
in the patch bay. It's all easy to get to. If I need those pre's,
Right.
we'll grab some stuff. If there's a cellist and we need to take a DI, like it's totally a great pre for, for whatever. I mean, and I've done a lot of stuff with Apollo. I still have my Apollo Twin over here that I use. I actually have an Apollo 16 that's for sale because I just upgraded to the Lynx system, the HDX system. But I have a lot of experience with the Apollo stuff, and it's a really cool interface with lots of options. And I still love their plugins. I've got an Octo satellite here, and use a lot of their plugins on these mixes. The Ocean Wave Room I use a ton. The EMT plate I use a ton. And then their Unison channel strips, the Vision strip, the API one is so great. The 560 EQ is really nice. And here at my studio, I have a desk made by Op Amp Labs from 1972, I believe, and that has these 2-band inductor EQs. It's got 12 channels of preamp that Dave Wheeler in Nashville put Cinemag output transformers on it for me, and did an amazing job putting that together. So that's kind of drums here. All I got to do is hit the power supply, and drums are ready to go. I import session data, and it's already in the patch bay. And then I've got a bunch of outboard gear over here, some Chandler pre's and Langevin pre's, and a 6176, the Ampex 351, which is a really cool little tape machine pre. It's an all tube preamp that Dave Wheeler did for me too. And I've got a lot of love for the Spectrasonic stuff too. Incredible. That 610 complementer is one of my favorite pieces, and I've got one of their 611 complementers. They make such incredible sounding gear. It's pretty awesome. So lots of dynamites and 160s and stuff like that too floating around.
160s, I love those. So Michael Rafter wants to know what is the mix process and turnaround time after recording to completed video. Now, just before you answer this, I know that yesterday you said that you were working on a new batch of these guys, of these songs, and there you were doing 10, and you said you told me something. You cut 40 something in some short amount of time.
Yeah, we've done 4 weekends over the last month and a half, and we've done 43 new songs.
Wow. So walk me through that timeline so we know you get together on Sunday. You said weekends, but you just do these on Sunday?
It's just a Sunday. Yeah.
So you record 10, 12 songs a day, depending on how easily the day is going.
Efficient,
and then from there, what do you do?
I usually give my ears a day off. And it's nice to have a little bit of perspective. Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, it's a dad joke.
And on the 8th day, that Monday I'll work on something else. I'll typically go in and work on an existing production gig or something like that. And then on Tuesday, or I'll mix prep what's happening because I'm tracking everything, but it's not necessarily on my rig with my plugins and all of that. I'll typically try to keep the sessions really clean. And when I go in, I'll take that session and I'll import session data from a mix template. And I've got a couple of really great mix templates going from existing prior sessions. And because I try to stay pretty close process wise, I've been using a vintage Sennheiser 441 on vocals, and this one's actually really cool. It's got a little history of this. I bought it in an auction, and it says United Western Recording Studios on it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so that's got some Hollywood history. But I've been using that on vocals, and that's presented some new hurdles, and so it's taken me out of my comfort zone a little bit, which has been really cool. I've actually really enjoyed it. But I'll typically mix a song in 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
That's with like noise cleanup, because a big part of it is like using RX, Isotope RX, which I love. Using their suite of plugins to like kind of keep the noise floor like really low, and when you've got ribbon mics and you've got people playing really quiet, even with like really nice clean preamps, you still end up with some noise, and you got to kind of keep track of that. And there's things in a long day that I'll end up missing, like a little buzz in the guitar amp, or whatever the thing is that that showed up in the room that day to annoy me later. I've got to handle it. So I can usually do a song in 30 minutes. I use a thing called Toggle to kind of track my time. TOGGL. It's a desktop app, and just to make sure that I'm keeping track of, because what I have as a rate with these guys is like I have a rate for mixing, and I have a rate for the session day. And the session day rate is cool because it's like, well, I know how many hours I'm going to be there. I can break that down, and the gig is consistent enough. I know I'm taking this in a direction, but I think this is kind of an important thing.
No, this is good. This is good stuff, man.
And I know that I can basically quantify what I'm making per hour and what my time is worth. When I'm in my studio, if I don't keep track of what kind of time I'm spending on certain things, I'll end up down a rabbit hole and not be nearly as productive. I don't like looking at the clock, but because this gig, we have so much material, I'll go like, okay, I have to be done with this one. I have to move on to a next one. I might revisit it, but I'll either upload it to a thing called Bounce Boss, which is the website that we use for reviewing audio. It's cool. I'm getting used to it, but I'll either upload it and give some notes saying like, I don't think this is loud enough yet, because I'm also mastering it at the same time. So like I'm using a whole suite of master bus things that I'm trying to keep everybody, the loud gods happy. So, there's a lot of things, and I'll put notes in there like, I'm still figuring out this vocal, but what do you think about the rest of it? And that way, when I'm getting notes back, I'm getting feedback about the things that are finished, and I can still be kind of thinking about the other elements of it without diving so deep that I get in the weeds. And I think that's an important thing. And I really only let myself mix like 4 or 5 of those songs in a day. So I try to split it up in half days so that I don't end up doing bad work. Like if I try to do 10 of these in a day, the work suffers, at the end of the day. So so we try to get them out in 3 or 4 days after we track them, so that we can at least get first round mixes to the editors for video.
Okay. So 30 minutes a song. Have you ever had to mess around with any pitch stuff, or is that like a no or like a Melodyne sort of thing? Have you ever had to touch any vocals?
A lady never tells.
Say no more.
I mean, it's a really funny thing. There was one video I remember. I can't remember what song. I think it was a Justin Timberlake song, maybe. And we tracked it here at my place, and Ryan was like, Justin, do you want to play some percussion on this? And I was like, oh, cool. Sure. And I went and grabbed this big frame drum, this ocean drum thing, and sat down with like a brush and was like playing this kind of loopy feeling thing. And I took a little maraca and I tossed it in my shoe. Like I tucked it in so that it was like sitting in my shoe, and I could kind of bounce my leg and get a little bit of like a shaker thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the video came out really cool, but as I was mixing it, I was like, man, there wasn't a mic down there. You can't really hear what that shaker's doing. So I just went and, grabbed a shaker, probably this one, because I love the banana, and just kind of did an overdub. I was like, well, they can see that there's a shaker down there. And maybe if I just tuck this into the mix, like it'll help support the mix and nobody will notice. And man, I got roasted in the comments for that. Like,
really?
Yes, the fans were like, where's that shaker coming from? Well, somebody's like, hey, it's on his shoe. And they were like, well, there's no mic down there. There's no way. And it's not totally in time with what's happening. And I was just like, okay, I'm sorry. I because Ryan commented back on the stories page and was just like, guys, no overdubs. We didn't overdub a thing. And I was like, hold up. I didn't tell you that I overdubbed, but I did. I'm sorry, everyone. It's my bad. I'll never do it again.
What song is that?
It's shoot, I'll send you a link to it. I can't remember.
Okay.
It's a Justin Timberlake song, so it's probably on the pop channel.
Okay. Send me a link and I may put it in the description. Gregory's got a good price. What loves do you master to when you do this stuff? I know there's a kind of a fine line between what's loud enough on YouTube and what you kind of get penalized for.
I know. I try to stick around. I mean, target -14, but there's like, we push up a little bit around -10, and it kind of just LUFs are funny. It kind of depends on the song, I mean, I just did an ad mix for an Amazon spot that like their stuff is like -26 to -22, and that's like Netflix broadcast standard, and it's what a pain, it's like you it feels like a bit of a moving target. And I try to get to a place with this stuff where I'm using my ears and where it doesn't feel pumpy and saturated. I'm using a thing called Standard Clip a little bit to get a little bit more boost out of it, which is a cool plugin and kind of last in line plugin. And then I'm monitoring with Insight. Isotope Insight. I guess the master bus is, and it changes. I've got the Neon PSP Neon HR as kind of like a first EQ in line, and a Chandler Curve Bender for some color. The ATR 102, the UA tape plugin, is typically on the master bus. And I use the Oxford Inflator, which is cool. I've read a lot about it. I don't exactly understand everything that it does, but it's one of those like, is this cool? If it sounds cool, leave it on. And then as a utility, I'll use Ozone a lot. Ozone, I love everything that FabFilter makes. I love their Pro L2 on the bus. So those are all kind of the bus things without getting like hyper specific. But I do a ton of filtering, and that's kind of the biggest move, because I'm doing a bunch of EQ in the room on the analog gear. And I typically that's kind of how I work anyways, is like I try to get as much analog EQ and compression going as I can. And so most of the moves that I'm making in the mix, especially with stories, it adds more banana. We all need more banana. I use the FabFilter EQs. I mean, it's a hard thing because they're such a visual EQ. but I still try to like, I'm not mixing with my eyes. I'm not mixing with my eyes. I'm not mixing with my eyes all day. But as a utility, it's on almost every channel, and it's a lot of high pass. It's a lot of subtractive EQ. It's a lot of I use very little additive EQ on those mixes. So most of what you're hearing is just like simple high pass moves, maybe a little bit of multi-band in places. The vocal typically, what have I been doing lately? I've got the Moog EQ, which I love, that I'll add a little bit of that air band here and there. And there's some really great frequency spots in that. I love the Soothe plugin. I use that a lot on vocals as a de-esser. I've even been using it on Master Bus lately, and that's been really fun. Like, why not?
That's cool.
Yeah, that's a really great one. And just that 560, EQ from the UAD API EQ is great. I've got a pair of 550Bs here in the studio that I use. I mean, almost every vocal chain here has that on it for good reason. But I just love how that 560 EQ
560 is the parametric or the graphic, right?
The graphic, yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
So
really,
okay,
really cool.
Well, let's see. Let's ask one more question here. Little quick fire questions. Have you worked with Greg Wells?
I've not worked with Greg Wells. I'm a big fan. I worked with an artist that he produced named Tristan Prettyman, who's still a super close friend. I'm still technically in her band as a drummer. We've toured together and we've made some records together. They made an incredible record. You should definitely check out, called Cedar and Gold. I think it came out around 2014. But he's incredible. He's incredible. Such a talented guy. He's amazing.
Yeah. Meryl wants to know, and you've covered this, but I guess kind of condense it into, you said you pack up some mics and take them over there. What are those mics? Yeah,
I take the pair of Soyuz, the 013s. It depends on what we're doing. I've got a pair of AEA ribbon microphones, the N22s, that I love, and you'll see those pop up in sessions. And I typically have this. It's a brass capsule 414 EB, and this mic sounds wonderful. I used to take my Flea 47 with me on those sessions, and now it just doesn't really make much sense to bring that. I bring a pair of Soyuz makes a thing called the Launcher, and it's basically like a cloud lifter with a tone circuit built into it. Kind of it's got a transformer thing, so it's got a really cool color. So I'll typically partner that with dynamic mics and passive ribbon microphones. We have a cloud lifter that we use on the R88 on the piano. So that's actually going through an active cloud lifter as well. Okay. And I think that's kind of it, unless I've got like a new toy that I'm trying out that I'm really psyched about, So, well, hey, but Ryan's got great mics there too. He's got it's kind of, you don't have to take a bunch when he's got an arsenal like he does. Right. Hey, let's listen to a little bit of one more song, and then we'll call it a day, because I know you got to get busy doing some stuff here. But this is Crazy. Oh, cool. With let's see, Danielle DeAndrea. Mm-hmm. She's and she did another version of Crazy for Scary Pockets, which is completely different than this one, but still they're both really good. Let's take a listen to this. Is that a U67 or 87? 87.
Stock?
I think so. It's an old one.
Crazy. I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. I'm crazy for feeling
What's on the other guitar on the left?
That's the 414.
The brass capsule?
I know
Yeah.
you love me as long as you want it.
I want to buy a steel guitar.
And then some
Say goodbye.
I really
to
do. I've been thinking about it.
A lot of practice.
for somebody new. Worry.
Okay, we've talked about enough audio stuff here that I want to know about the camera setup for this. Just really quick, this is a 2-camera shoot, like one
This is
static wide shot, and then
Yep.
a one camera that just goes around.
Mm-hmm. Yep. This is probably at this time there was, and I know very little about cameras, so you can educate me, but there was the wide shot was, they used to put it on this motorized thing that had a track about that long, and the camera would like stay focused. It would move, and then so it was constantly like really slowly kind of in motion throughout the day.
Right.
And then they would reset it. And then there would be a handheld of some kind, a steady cam situation where, and the rig that Dijon, our videographer, uses now is like, he's got this insane, like it goes over his back, and the mic, or the mic, that's where my brain is. The camera like hangs off of this big body mounted harness. There it is, slider.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a cool, and the amount of, and they bring in lighting, they always bring in a ton of gear for video. That's one of those processes where Ryan's just like, that technology changes so fast. Even just to, I don't know, we haven't talked directly about this, but from what I understand, like every videographer has their own preferences and the stuff that they like to use and they think looks good. I know that for this new stuff, Dijon's been using a lot of old glass, so the lenses have more of a, we're on
vintage.
It's the more of a vintage kind of look. It's like the tape emulation plug-in of video.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's real time. So
I'm fascinated by what you guys are doing. I think you're doing an amazing job with the audio. When I saw this, I just thought, man, this would be, for somebody who has a studio and who wants to kind of level up what they're offering, to be able to do something like this, and the limitations, I talked about a few weeks ago, this limitation of a box, and, and having these restrictions that you have to do and how you flourish. Like I heard you say, you take 30 minutes to mix a song, and some of the stuff is done in one take. And, you have all these limitations. There's something beautiful about that. I think it makes music better. I think unlimited everything makes it doesn't necessarily make for better music or videos. Yeah.
I think thinking of them as not even walls or a box, but as parameters, and setting like really healthy deadlines for yourself and for whatever the project is, to where you're still finding joy in the work, and still feeling inspired, and we're not looking at the clock every day. I mean, I try to like instill a bit of that freedom in my own kind of, in my own production work and the way that I run things here at my studio. I don't back projects up, back to back to back to back. I try to give a little bit of wiggle room in case things take a little more time, and these guys, especially for stories, like we set really healthy deadlines, and I get pushed here and there. It's like, hey, when can we expect these? Well, I've got a band in this week, so sometimes that takes a precedent, and I don't want to try to mix these things at night and let the work suffer for either thing. Like the client on any level deserves me at 100%,
Right.
So
it's always something to manage, I guess. Justin, man, it's been such a pleasure and joy, and I appreciate your willingness to come on and let us grill you with questions. And I'm
Thanks,
really looking
Kevin.
forward to coming back to LA, and I'm gonna bug you until I can buy
come
you
on.
lunch or coffee or something like that. Okay.
We'll find a taco truck.
A taco truck sounds good. All right. Well, hey man, I will let you go for now. I'm gonna close down the show, and we'll connect soon. Okay. Thanks for coming,
Sounds
man.
good. Thanks, brother.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So I loved that. So don't forget to subscribe if you're not subscribed. So that way you'll get little things like this. And thanks for watching today. Be sure and check out see if I can find the workshop here. Go to themixcoach.com/workshop, and I do a mixing workshop there, and I think you'll love it. Okay. I will see you next week. Bye, guys. Bye.